Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inclusion Starts Now podcast. I am so excited you're here for all of the wonderful interviews we are doing this season. And today I am going to introduce you to my friend Aaliyah, who is a parenting educator. No, wait, yeah, educator. We just talked about the educator and coach difference, and then I got confused in my own language. So, Aaliyah, would you love to introduce yourself for us, please?
Yes, I would. So I am a parent educator, parent coaching. Well, we'll see. But that right now, the title that I like is parent educator, and I support Black moms of young children who want to gentle parent and live more intentionally.
I love that. How did you get into that?
Whew, okay, so um,
Let's
just
start with a super simple question.
Yeah, so it really starts. So I feel like I always have to tell kind of a little bit of the full story of how I even got here. I have always loved kids. Like ever since I was a little girl, I had people who told me like you should be a teacher. My grandma, she used to wonder because kids kind of just gravitated to me. And it was like I was a kid myself and kids would gravitate to me. And so, like, other people just always noticed that in me, and I didn't know what else to do. So, teaching it was. And I got my first degree in education, elementary and special education, back in 2020. Started out my teaching journey as a virtual educator and learned very fast that I was pregnant. And I didn't want to end up having my daughter and dealing with the frustrations of everything that happens in the school. So I decided that I was going to stay home with my daughter. And I mean, when I tell y'all, I've literally done everything. I've been a museum educator, after school program instructor. I've done summer camp. I've done tutoring. So like I've done it all. And there was always like this one piece that I took away from it. And it was that I love the kids. Like I love talking to the kids. I just love getting to see who they are. Like I could teach them, but I want to be able to know who they are first so then I can teach them. And so I tried to run from it for about 3 years until it just kind of like finally hit me. You don't love anything else more than you love being able to talk to kids and get to know who they are and like have them see those like aha moments and grow, not just academically, but whenever they grow in areas like mentally, socially, emotionally. So I started doing some researching. I got my master's degree in youth development leadership, and that was like kind of like the big eye opener whenever I was doing my final project. And I did it all on the whole child and seeing how children are really more, people in general are more than just what they can do as far as schooling, what they can do as far as like the knowledgeable skills that we use throughout school. And so that kind of led me to be like, okay, well, social emotional learning, but it got deeper to this point where in my community, growing up as a Black Christian woman, where there were lots of things that I was seeing that just irritated me. I would see the way that parents would talk to their kids or how they would handle a situation with a child who was like 2 years old. And I'm like, they're a baby. They don't understand. You got to get down on their level and talk to them. And so I just started noticing that there were more and more things that were aggravating me. And I was like, okay, well, if this aggravates you, that means something. And it's probably that this is what you're supposed to be doing. And that is where I am now, where I am helping African American women, Black moms of young children to learn how to gentle parent. But in order to learn, we also have to heal ourselves. And we also have to look at what we are doing so that we can better show our children. And so that's how I
Yeah.
got.
Well, I think it's hilarious that you have like ever tried not to go into education as all of your jobs were around children.
Every single last one. There was only one job that I had that was not children, and it was Captain D's.
And did you like that job?
Um,
Only when kids came in?
I didn't like drive through, but I liked talking to people. So in a way, it was still that aspect of liking to have conversations.
Yeah. And you actually mentioned teaching to the whole child, which
Mhm.
I think is something that a lot of people kind of focus on, like the good qualities of a child or the easier qualities of a child, and they kind of reward them based off of like trying to get to those really specific behaviors.
Right.
Where when you're parenting or teaching to the whole child, you are accepting all those hard times too. I mean, we were just talking right before this about how my 2-year-old is having these extreme tantrums that just feel they're something so small might have triggered it, but it's such a big tantrum. And I can feel myself like getting dysregulated because he's screaming and he wants something that he just can't have. And it's like really hard to try to like, find peace for myself. So what would you like suggest for, because I know I'm not the only parent out there or as a teacher not having these moments. What kind of strategies do you suggest?
Yeah, most definitely. First, it's always like making sure that nobody is going to hurt themselves or going to hurt anybody else. Like that is always the first and key point. So right now, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my children are in this stage where they love each other so dearly, but they also fight like cats and dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are moments where I have to, okay, I'm going to let you come play over here and you're going to play over here. But what do you do as a parent when you're the one that actually needs to go over somewhere? And so that's when it gets to this point where I will let my children know, hey, mommy needs a moment to step away. So I'm going to go into this room. I'm going to close my door instead of shutting you into a room because a lot of times I don't even think that we realize that that puts a trauma on our kids. It might just seem like, oh, well, I'm just putting them in their room so, they can have a moment to breathe or so that, I can have a moment to breathe. But my daughter has actually been expressing because at night we used to close her door so that they would stay in their room and go to sleep. But lately she has been telling us like, mommy, I am really scared when the door is closed. So you keep it open? And I think like we've just been so accustomed to it, like closing our door. But we even have to think about those things. So instead of locking your children in a room, lock yourself in a room and be like, I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. When my timer goes off, that's when mommy is going to come back out. And then let's try this again. And so like that's one of like the biggest strategies whenever you're dysregulated and you feel like you're about to get to that point where it's like I'm about to take my frustration out on my child, step away first.
I think that's such a great tip, and that's something that I do think a lot of people send their kids to their room to just be like, go take a break or whatever. When in reality, we need the break. And then I think doing that is also a really great example of showing the child,
Yeah.
I'm dysregulated. This is how I'm gonna, regulate myself. I've told people this story of I was really mad at my kids, and I to let my frustrations out, I grabbed a pillow and I just like hit it on the couch, like nowhere near them. They were nowhere near me getting so angry, but I was just like hitting the pillow and I was like, "Why can't you guys just listen to me?" And and I even like they even stopped and they were like, "Whoa, like what happened?" And then afterwards I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry that like," or I don't think I apologized, but I was like, or maybe I said like, "I'm sorry if I scared you," because I did know that that was like I was like really mad. Um but it was one of those like conversations that we got to keep having, that I reminded them that like I was mad, but I didn't hit someone near me or I didn't hurt myself. Like I found a physical way to get my anger out that kept everybody safe.
Hmm.
And so when they, because I mean, we are in the thick of it, is what I'm pretty sure everyone tells you too when they hear the ages of our two children,
Yes,
that we are in just high emotions and hitting and behaviors for communication. I just think it's so healthy for us to show how to like safely feel these really big emotions that are inevitable. Like they're always there. Um,
exactly.
but yeah, and again, we were kind of talking about this before because I should probably just hit record the second I start talking to someone. I That's really what it is.
There's gonna be a
Um,
good piece in there.
I know, and we missed it. Um, but we were talking about more specifically the Black community because statistics show that in Black communities, it is 1 in 4 kids have a disability, which is the highest number out of all cultural backgrounds. And I would love to know like what your thoughts are about that, or you just raising a Black child with a disability and how to continue being that supportive parent.
So, like I had kind of briefly shared, and I was trying so hard not to go so deep into it, is I've noticed a lot in the African American community is that whenever they have a child that has a disability, they still try to teach them like a child that does not have a disability. And so I have seen where it's been like, getting yelled at to be telling a child to shut up because they don't understand what's going on around them. And like, as I've seen it as early as 1 years old, and I think as old as about 10 and 11. And so those are like the age ranges that like whenever I'm talking about this is what I'm seeing. And so it's been like where they're getting told shut up or they're being made to sit down. And it's like, okay, well, if it's that they need to kind of get some energy out, try something different instead of continuously saying, sit down, stop that, shut up. And that is such a hard word, like even saying it right now, because I don't use the word shut up. And so it feels so hard,
Yeah.
like harsh coming out of my mouth. Um, but seeing that you cannot just raise a child with disabilities the same way that you would do a child who does not have them. You can't talk to them the same way. You have to learn what it is that helps them. And that means that it's going to take you doing the hard work to actually learn who they are, to actually see what they take interest in, to try different things. Because the first thing you try might not be the thing that lasts for a long time. It might not even be the thing that they want to do the next day to help them. So it takes like a lot of work on for us as parents, for us as teachers. It takes a lot of work for us to actually get to learn these children and find different things to put in their toolkit to help them get through certain things that they're feeling. And to, I don't know why we try to make kids sit down. Like, I can hardly stay in my seat. Like, I actually have the urge to get up and jump and dance right now, but I'm trying to stay myself. But it's like, how can we expect children to sit all the time for long periods of time whenever we can't even do it ourselves? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I think that is like a huge point that you just made of like, why do we expect this of children when we can't do it? And I love all the videos that compare like an adult sitting on their phone and another adult just takes it away and is like, okay, go have lunch. And it's like, what? No. And, like mimicking what it would be like for a child who's playing with a toy that like the parent just takes away and is like, okay, go have lunch. Um, and I do think that is like a really hard, it's hard to like wrap your head around because like you are responsible for these children as a teacher or as a parent. Like you are the one who's supposed to be, teaching them or feeding them or getting them through like getting through this day. Um, but throughout any day, there's going to be like dysregulations or them trying to communicate something, but they don't know how to communicate it yet, or they're going through a feeling that they don't know how to feel really.
Right.
And I just think that's like, it's hard to just remind parents, like, you're doing well. You are also allowed to get mad and then like come back from it as we're all like getting mad. We're all dealing, like, all of our behaviors are basically like going off of everybody else's behaviors around us, which
Right.
is, um,
That's what
crazy. Changes
it's
all the time.
that like takes me back to the quote that like a happy wife, a happy life. And, growing up, I used to hear that. I used to say it all the time, and it didn't really hit me until one day my fiance was like, "Hey, your mood change really affects us as well." And I'm like, just because I get upset because we didn't get somewhere on time, now y'all's moods are changed? Like, how? But as like I really started to notice and focus in on when that happens, it's like, oh wow, yeah, the things that I do whenever I'm frustrated and how I kind of used to like, because I used to shut down whenever I started feeling a certain type of way or something didn't go the way that I wanted, which makes me very much think about children, and how sometimes things don't go their way and they get really upset. But I was a person who would shut down. I don't want you to talk to me. I don't want to talk to anybody else. And so just seeing how by me doing that, that my family is seeing how I react to certain situations. And it's like, okay, I'm teaching my child that when something doesn't go her way, when something doesn't go his way, all they have to do is just shut down and expect for everybody to kind of like join in on their pity party. And
Yeah.
it's like, do you really want your children to grow up thinking that everybody just has to join in on their pity party instead of seriously working through what they're feeling? So,
Yeah. And it's hard because then it makes you do it. I mean, it's kind of like this forced therapy that you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm mad and I'm mad because of this. Like, I mean, I actually use this quite often that when I'm frustrated and I start getting like, if I'm like getting quiet or like snapping or something, I will start telling my kids. And again, I mean, 3 and 2, they are little children. And I have done this their entire lives where if I'm frustrated, I'm telling them, I'm like, I'm really frustrated because you keep asking for milk, but I'm in the process of making your lunch. I told you I will get you your milk. Can you please go sit somewhere and like wait? Like you've done it. Now go play with the toy. I promise you I will get you this milk. Like, but I do like I talk things out so much. And especially the 3.5 year old, she's definitely starting to say some language back, and I can see her saying it to friends where she's like, that was my brother's toy and you took that. So I don't think that was very kind. Or, it's a special toy. Like I could see her trying to figure out like how to
how to,
communicate. And it's
right.
it's been it's been really cool. But it also
It,
takes a lot of work, and I still get mad at least once a day. I mean,
and that's the thing. We're
three
still
to
going
four
to
times.
feel our emotions, but it's just how do we handle it afterwards? How are we reacting to it?
Yeah. Oh, and oh my, I can't believe I even did not even go back to this line. That you were saying that people in the Black community don't raise their children with disabilities like they have a disability. Like they kind of just try to ignore it or
Hmm.
just treat them like they don't have a disability. Would you care to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's basically like so what I have seen, I've seen like that we can tend to we address that they have a disability, like yes, they have autism, they have mutism, like whatever it is, we'll address that there is a disability there. However, for example, if they run off, now we're whooping them for running off when it could have been handled in a different light. So, and I mean, this is just for any child, because there's a lot of things that we do with children who have disabilities that I'm like, can we also do that with children who don't have it? Like, because that actually will work for
Oh,
everybody.
totally.
And so it's like instead of just the first thing that you're doing whenever your child who has disabilities, like the first thing you do is you want to spank them. The first thing that you want to do is yell at them. How about you actually sit down with them and try to talk it with them? Like I know for some
Hmm.
children who have disabilities, it's a little harder because I have a nephew, he has autism, but if you talk to him, he actually talks back to you. And it's like I know some people are like, oh, I can't talk to him like that because they're not going to respond. I can tell that he understands what I am talking about whenever I say, hey, I need you to come help me do this. Or, hey, I would love if you would stop doing that right now and go have a seat. And then we can get back up and do that once we're done with this. And so it's just this place of instead of your first result being physical punishment or yelling, raising your voice, but instead meeting them at their level.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example of like presumed competence that and that's what a lot of people in the disabled community want. They they want to be talked to like everyone else. And I love that you just shared that because I think that is something super important. Um, oh man, I so many things are going through my head. I was gonna write them all down and then I lost it. So it made me think of this one practice that I have now. I randomly thought of it where I basically compared like how to help or how to support a student who's having a dysregulated behavior or a child. And
Mhm.
it's with like a fire or like you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll. And so it was stop giving them demands, like stop, giving them a bunch of information, drop down to their level, and then roll through the emotion with them. And is that so cool?
I
Totally
love that.
randomly thought of it, but it is seriously because it's like, they're dysregulated. And so then you're feeling dysregulated. And then it's like, that makes it just so much worse. And everyone's climbing this dysregulated ladder of just
Because
horribleness.
that's something else that I noticed is that a lot of times in the Black community that our children, you just told them something that they obviously didn't like you told them that they had to stop playing and now they have to go pee because I'm going to use that example because literally we're still in the potty training phases. So I tell my daughter, stop, go pee. I don't want to go pee. I want to play. And it's like oftentimes we'll see in a situation like this, a parent will snatch the child up, take them to the bathroom. And once this child is crying, then we want to sit here and start zoning in on them like, this is why I need you to do this, and you can't do this, and da, da,
Hmm.
da, da. It's like they're not hearing a word you're saying right now because
Yes.
they are distraught and you are literally trying to have a whole conversation with someone when they are completely zoned out. All they're thinking about is what they are currently feeling. They don't want to hear your strategy right now.
Yes. There is a really great book. I've been really obsessed with it this year. It's called The Whole Brain Child. I will also put, have you read it?
Okay, so I've been like, okay, honest moment. I've been working on this book for some years. But I have it and I have gotten through some of it and I absolutely love it.
It's so good. I mean, and the biggest summary of the book is that when someone, anyone, if, I mean, mostly kids, it's about kids, but I feel like this is helpful for anyone. That if someone is dysregulated, sad or angry or mad, the worst thing you can do is try to reason with them logically. Is that you need to connect with them emotionally. And that makes so much sense. Like when I'm upset or sad, I don't need my partner coming in and being like, hey, I know you're sad, but like, come on, let's just, go get some food. Like, the kids love you. You're fine. Or you, whatever. It's like, no, that's not like, I want to be hugged. Sit in my sadness with me.
Please.
Yeah.
Like, let me
Um,
feel this emotion right now. It's not to say that by you being in this moment with me that I'm going to be here forever, but it helps me to see that one, you don't only care about me whenever I'm happy, but you also care about me through these other emotions, that these other emotions are also accepted.
yes. And that is so important. I mean, as adults, as children, like everybody has these big emotions. So
Yeah.
might as well just accept them. Learn to feel them safely and with each
They're
other.
gonna
Um, so I am going to kind of switch topics, sort of, because a lot of your posts talk about, well, not a lot, but some of your recent posts, you were talking about, you were saying like, where are my Black mamas? Like, why aren't you guys out at events? Like, how can I get you there?
right.
And as a white person, and as I know that there are a lot of white people who follow me, would you say that there's anything that I could do, that we could do, that would make a difference? That we could, I don't know,
And so like
help
this is
the
where it kind
situation?
of yeah, this is where it kind of gets a little deep because we now live in an economy where like both parents have to work. And it's not everybody
Boo.
no, it's like not everybody gets the luxury of being a stay-at-home mom or being able to work like part-time hours because that's what I call what I do whenever I substitute teach. It's part-time, okay? But not everybody gets this luxury. So it's like there's this place where it's like these moms can't get to these events because they're working. A lot of these events happen at literally a random Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know about anybody else, but I can get my kids out of the house by 10:30. 10, 9:30, 9 o'clock. You're asking for a lot. So it's that component. And it's just there's also like the issue with some families only have one car. So like with some of the issues, it's like there isn't a place where you could be supportive, but then at the same time, there is like maybe we start having events later in the afternoon. Or if you know a mom, and this is one thing I always say is ask before you touch or give advice. Because there's sometimes whenever we are in situations and we don't want to hear somebody tell us how to handle our child. Now, do we
Hmm.
probably need it sometimes? Yes. But do we want to hear it in that moment whenever our child is hollering and yelling at us and we're trying to do this gentle parent approach? Not at all.
All I
So,
want is for someone to say, "Hey, you're doing a great job," and then walk away. And I'll be like, "Thanks."
like in that moment, I'm like, dang, you sure? But whenever I go and think about it later on, I'm like, wow, I actually am doing great.
That's all I want when people, yeah.
And so yeah, like,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, you go
So,
ahead.
so that's one of the biggest things is like ask before giving advice. Because if we could get things changed to a later time or maybe even the weekends or if you know a mama that you've gotten to know, then if she is willing, because that's another thing that like there's so many things in the Black community that we have to break off because it's like generational curses, generational like traditions that we just kind of settle in, but it's like this pride piece where we don't want to ask for help. And I mean, I see it in both Black women and men, but I feel like just being a Black woman, I see it more so in us because we're the independent woman. We're supposed to, as moms, we're supposed to do everything by ourselves. We're not supposed to ask for help. But I believe if we began to ask for help more, we could show up in more of these spaces. Like if you only have one car, if you have a mama friend who has a car, why not just ask her, hey, if you're already going, do you have space in the back seat for me to go to? Well, because some of us have multiple children and we don't have minivans. So,
I got multiple seats. We do only have one car since we've moved, but I am happy to pick people up
yeah,
and
so that's
put my three
that
and a half year old in the back.
and that's the piece is like just helping where you can, but always asking first. Another thing is like educate yourself. There are some topics that are very difficult for us to have as Black women, and they open up wounds. So like for example, I'll share because this actually recently happened to me. I have a friend. She has Black in her, but primarily she's Puerto Rican. And there was an issue that we had talked about because it brought up this conversation of police. And as a Black woman, I am uncomfortable anytime I see a police officer. And so we just went down this conversation where she was like, well, why are you uncomfortable? Police officers are usually nicer to women, and you shouldn't look at them like that. You should look at them as if they're here to help. And
Oof.
immediately I just felt like all my walls start building up. And I was like ready to, I'm going to be honest, I was ready to get her out of my car. Because that's what having that
Yeah.
conversation did to me. Because it's like, as a Black woman, it doesn't matter if I am a woman or a man. I am dark skinned at that. I'm not light skinned. I am dark skinned. So oftentimes I am looked at just as if I am a man, just as if I am a Black man. So I don't get this short end of the stick where I just don't, experience some of those things that other people experience. So, one thing, educate yourself about certain topics.
Hmm.
Ask first, again, asking before you just jump into some topics because they literally could be triggering someone. And then I
Yeah.
guess my last point, because there's so many points that I could speak on, but I guess my last point would just be inclusivity. Show us that we are welcome in these spaces. Show us that it's not just for white children, that we actually can join in and be a part, and that it is open for us to come in as well. But don't just show us that, but also make us feel welcome. I can't tell you how many times like I've gone into spaces and I didn't personally experience, but my fiance, he experienced it and like he was ready for us to leave. And we were at the library and he felt like one of the moms didn't want her child to play with our daughter.
Ugh.
And so for him, he took it as she doesn't want her kids to play with our kids because they're Black. And so it's just showing us and making us feel welcome in spaces so that we don't feel like, well, dang, we can't come here anymore because y'all don't accept us.
Yeah. No, I think the generational trauma is something that just like, I mean, so I've read a lot of books about trauma. I think it is something that is so important just to understand. I mean, this was really, I got it started because working with the disabled community, I just felt like I was seeing a lot of trauma, and a lot of the students I was working with were children of color. And I wanted to understand it more. I wanted to understand like the trauma that could be there, the generational trauma that I find so fascinating how much, I mean, and then think about how you're parenting based off of like, how you got parented. So like,
Exactly.
my grandparents parented my parents in a specific way. They learned from it, decided to do better, and then they parented me. And so then I learned from it. I want to do better, and now I'm parenting my kids. And it's just like taking those steps, but there's definitely a lot of vulnerability and like kind of putting yourself out of your comfort zone, um, to just like really make people feel included. I feel like it's totally my favorite word. I talk about it obviously
Yes.
all the time. Um, but I
And
think those are I think those are really great tips. Um, and I like the how you said like not like asking before kind of diving into a topic. Because I do think we just as people have a really hard time when someone, and this is actually, I think, goes back to feeling those tough emotions where someone will say, like, oh, what you're saying is just like really like triggering. I really don't want to talk about it.
Mhm.
Um, and then that person then feeling bad. And then it's like you just said that you felt triggered, but now you're feeling bad because you made them feel bad. And like,
Right.
that's also definitely not what we want. We want to all feel comfortable to like have these boundaries and to talk about things in a way that like we feel comfortable talking about them.
Right.
Um,
And that's
but
like
yeah,
something is that boundary piece is because before, like if this probably would have happened to me a year ago, I probably would have just let that conversation continue and would have just zoned her out instead of speaking up for myself and being like, hey, this conversation is actually triggering me. And so she did. She asked me, like, asked me why it was like triggering, trying to just get an understand of it. And it was just like, hey, I seriously don't want to talk about this anymore. Can we change the subject? And so
yeah.
that's another piece of being communicative people and teaching our children
Hmm.
how to communicate whenever something is happening that you don't necessarily like and just talking about it.
Yeah. And I mean, we also can't get offended when other people have boundaries. I mean, learning like, okay, that's a boundary. I'm going to respect that. Like, how can we continue this relationship?
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I thank you so much for all of this. I wrote down so many things from your videos that I wanted to talk about, but we are like running out of time. So this is your chance right now to tell anyone listening. I will put this all in the show notes too of how to contact you. But if you want to give your little send off of who you are, where we can follow you, where we can connect with you,
All
now
right.
is the
So,
time.
so again, I am Aaliyah. I am a parent educator for Black moms of young children who want to gentle parent and live more intentionally. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I believe those are the ones that I'm on at the Organized Creator. And you can also find me on my website at organizedcreator.com. I one thing that I just want to leave with is, which is something that we've really been talking a lot about. It starts with you. Like whatever you want to see in your children, you first have to do it within yourself.
That is so great because that leads to my send off that I say on every email and podcast that inclusion starts with you, and I just want to help. So thank you, Aaliyah, so much for being here.
Thank you
Um,
for
and
having me.
and thank you everyone for being here too.
Hey.
Have a good night or day, whatever time it is.